Investor Brand Network, IBN, a multifaceted communications organization engaged in connecting public companies to the investment community, is pleased to announce the launch of the Stock2Me Podcast as part of its sustained audio communications effort to provide specialized content distribution via widespread syndication channels. The following Stock2Me Podcast is an Investor Brand Network audio production and may feature a client partner of IBN. Investor Brand Network may have been compensated for the production of this podcast. Please be sure to read our entire disclaimer for full disclosure. Thank you, and here today is your host of the Stock2Me Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us once again for the Stock2Me Podcast, brought to you by the Investor Brand Network. Today, we're speaking to AzurRx BioPharma Inc. The company's traded on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol AZRX. We're lucky enough to be joined by the president and CEO of the company, James Sapirstein. James, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Stuart.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to speak with us today. Before we get deep into our topics, let's go ahead and address who the company is and what are the markets that you operate in first. Go ahead.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity again to do this. So at AzurRx Bio, we've been around for 5 years. We've been public for 4. And we have our main product, which is MS-1819. We are studying the product in chronic pancreatitis and in cystic fibrosis for GI effects of cystic fibrosis.
Well, let's talk a little bit then. I've been through your website, and listeners, please go there. AzurRx is AzurRx.com. Talks a lot about your therapies, your recombinant therapies for gastrointestinal diseases. But let's touch on those markets because they are separate and distinct markets. Cystic fibrosis on the one hand, and then pancreatitis on the other hand. I've got experience through family and friends with both. These are obviously massive markets, but since you're entrenched in those markets, can we talk a little bit about the numbers that you're addressing?
Sure. Well, let's start with pancreatitis. So, and we're in for the market for chronic pancreatitis because there's 2 types. There's acute pancreatitis and chronic. And chronic pancreatitis just means that people have it long term, and the types of patients that you see that get this are people with some severe liver disease, whether it's through alcoholism or through hepatitis, and it's a very painful disease. Now, it's far more prevalent outside the United States, really, when you're looking in Asiatic countries or even Eastern Europe, where there tends to be a lot more liver disease. So the numbers that we're looking at are several million people outside the United States, and in the United States, it's a little closer to about 800,000 people. The market for this particular product, which we're going to get into some of the clinical data in a second, but we compete against what's called PERTs, and which are pancreatic enzyme replacement therapies. So the market is about $1 billion outside the United States, a little less, several hundred million in the United States. The other market is cystic fibrosis, and most people think about cystic fibrosis as a pulmonary disease because they see, if they know any patients, they know that they have an enzyme that's missing, and it kind of takes away their ability to get mucus out of their lungs. So a lot of these young kids, as they get into adulthood as well, they have to take a lot of different medications to clear their lungs, or they wear these vests to pound their chest to get the mucus out. But what's not commonly known is a lot of these folks have gastrointestinal problems. That is, they really cannot digest. These people lack certain enzymes called amylase, protease, and lipase. And in essence, you need these enzymes to process these nutrients. So that's really what these PERTs have. These PERTs are crushed up pig pancreases that are put into capsules. And basically, you're taking porcine pancreas enzymes to help people absorb their nutrients. So, in essence, that's really where the market comes from. You have some pretty large competitors out there like AbbVie and Nestle, and it's over a $2 billion market worldwide for these PERTs.
Well, some recent news just came out about this, James, as of course you know, but listeners, I want to point it out to you using that ticker symbol again, AZRX, came out November 17th. And this gives us a peek into the process that you have to go through. AzurRx BioPharma requests protocol amendment to phase 2B option 2 study of MS1819 in cystic fibrosis patients. Now, again, this gives us a peek into the process that you have to go through. Tell us a little bit about what this news is touching on.
Sure. So this news specifically has to do with our monotherapy trial that we call Option 2. The company is in the midst of 2 trials in phase 2B. One of them is the Option 2 trial that this news relates to. The other is a combination trial that we're doing in Europe. But let's talk about the question that you asked. This is what we call a crossover design study where we place patients on PERT, existing standard of care therapy, and we also put another line of patients on our drug. And these patients take the drugs for 3 weeks, and then we cross over. Basically, the patients that are on PERT go over to our drug, and the patients that are our drug go over to PERT. And then we do these measurements, which, I won't get into right now, and we see how the patients have done. So these patients are not being studied versus placebo, which is the normal way you study drugs. And the reason is because they're pretty sick folks, and the FDA does not want them to not be on their medications while they're studying. And so this is the design that's conducted in cystic fibrosis. In this particular press release, what we're announcing is that we're actually adding another arm where we can dose escalate because we enrolled the trial very quickly. Even though it's COVID, we came up with a different way of conducting this trial earlier this year. We launched it in August, and we got our patients in really, really quickly. We thought it would take 6 or 7 months. It took 3. And because of that, we decided to try to get some more data out of this trial with another arm.
Okay, excellent. So you brought up COVID. That is my next question for you. Let's talk a little bit about your company's response, or at least how you had to read and react to the environment that was created by a global pandemic. Starting in March, obviously, is where we really felt the effect of sort of shutdowns and things like that continued through May and April and May. How did your company make it through?
It's a great question. So in my career, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I've worked in infectious diseases for most of my career. So I'm actually on a COVID task force. I kind of get some information before everybody else does. So I immediately, back in February, told my clinical group that this virus is going to be pretty bad, and a lot of countries are going to start shutting down. So for our combination trial, we decided to start getting some backups. We definitely called the folks in Europe that were working on our trial, and we said, look, try to get as many patients as you can right now, and they did. And then we also opened up Poland, and we opened up Turkey. Now, mind you, when you launch a trial, it just takes you time to open up these sites. You can't open it up one day to the other. So it takes several months to get these sites up and running and calibrated. So the combination trial, we lost about a month on COVID, but not significant amount of time. We had our Spanish sites open and then close immediately the same day that we opened them, and then we just announced that we're going to close them completely and move everything over to Turkey. In the United States, we took a very different approach with our Option 2 trial. Because of these patients, they don't need a lot of blood work. We decided to sequester these folks rather than a hospital clinic. We sequester them in hotels. Obviously, there's a lot of hotel space available, and so we put that into our protocol. We got it approved by the FDA, and we're able to get these patients who enjoy being on these studies, quite frankly, to sequester in hotels, and that's how we were able to do it this quickly.
Well, let's talk about the team there. Let's talk about yourself and your background first as the president and CEO, and then who you have surrounded yourself with.
Sure. So I only joined the company 13 months ago, and one of the reasons I joined was, besides I thought this is a terrific product that could really make a difference in people's lives, Jim Pennington, who's our chief medical officer, was on the team. And I've known Jim for a very long time, dating back to when he was a professor in infectious diseases at Harvard Medical School. But Jim, in the last 25 years, has been involved with all sorts of big pharma, but also the last venture he had. He actually worked on a PERT competitor at a company called Anthera. So Jim's been in this field for a good 14, 15 years, knows it extremely well. My CFO is Dan Schneiderman, who has also joined just after I joined. We made some changes at the top, and we brought Dan in. Dan is a terrific CFO who's got great experience in the life sciences area, was a banker early on in his career, and has really done a great job in helping me turn the company around. And Martin Crusin, who's one of the original members of the company, does our corporate development, and Martin's also been with a couple of life sciences companies and has run a bunch of smaller companies himself. Myself, been around 37 years, 17 years in big pharma, Eli Lilly, Bristol Myers Squibb, Hoffler Roche for 10 years. Then I went to Gilead, where I was in charge of the global launch of Viriad, their flagship product at the time. Got recruited out to Serono and used to run the U.S. group of metabolic and endocrinology at Serono, and then decided to go into the world of venture capital, and I founded a company called Tabira Therapeutics. We eventually sold Tabira to Allergan for $1.7 billion in the NASH space, and I've done a couple of other smaller NASDAQ companies in between, and came over to AzurRx. One more thing I want to put in there. The reason, it's connecting my career full circle. One of the first products I launched, or was part of launching, was with Eli Lilly, which was human insulin, Humulin. And at that time, porcine-derived insulin and bovine or beef-derived insulin had been around for 85 years. And no one really wanted to take a DNA-modified, E. coli-modified insulin. But now, fast forward, 30-something years, and even in the short run, it's almost 100% of all the insulin used is human insulin. So I see this market for AzurRx going the same way. There's really no reason to use pork-derived products when you're going to have something like ours, which is humanized.
Well, you touched on this a little bit when we talked about COVID and its impact, but as you look back on 2020 and even your 13 months since you've come on board, what do you see as some of the major milestones you and the company have been able to achieve?
Thanks for that question, because people forget we're in a microcap space, and we've cleaned the balance sheet. Now, you may not think that's very important, but that's really important. When I came in, we had some issues on the financial side. We had quite a bit of debt. We needed to collect some money from the French authorities, where we have a site. We were able to get all of that done in short order, and we raised quite a bit of money. We raised $6.9 million. In January of this year. Then I raised another $15.2 million in July. We cleaned out all our debt, and we're fully funded through third quarter, around this time next year. So we've got a significant runway with no debt, and that's significant because it gives us the opportunity to do a lot of things, and quite frankly, finish our Phase 2B program, pay for a lot of the manufacturing work that we need done to enter Phase 3. So we're nicely set up for end of Phase 2 discussions with the FDA next year. We were able to get our studies started. The combination study we're able to pay for, and we're able to get our option 2 study started this year. So quite a bit was done in a short amount of time for a small company.
Well, kudos to you for that. Absolutely. Not lost on me. Been in this space for 20 years, an accountant by trade. So that balance sheet cleanup, taking care of management 101, very important and really on a parallel path to where you're going with your therapies as well. So looking forward, if you will, let's talk a little bit about the goals for the company. Obviously, there's not much time left here in 2020, so we can look at Q1, Q2, 2021 as well. What are some of your personal operational goals for the company?
Well, the main goal is to get a readout on these trials. We have the combination trial that's in Europe ongoing. We're picking up patients as we go this year, even during COVID. But it's a slow slog because these folks are very ill. These are patients that are failing on their current PERT therapy. So we have to wait for these folks to join our trial. as opposed to option 2, where it's a little bit more active in terms of getting patients who are currently well controlled on their CF protocol. So option 2, which I just mentioned, will read out first quarter of next year. We'll have top line data so that we'll have a very good picture of how we work in monotherapy, and in the combination trial should read out the second quarter of next year as well. So we have 2 major milestones for the company, and our goal, at least my goal, has been to look at MS-1819 and try to partner it. We're a small company competing against some very big boys like AbbVie and Nestle. We're not going to be able to do this on our own in terms of going out there and marketing the product. So we've been pretty active in talking to potential partners to see if it's something that they're interested in, and we've got a lot of traction there. Quite frankly, AbbVie and Nestle compete against some bigger GI companies who have some holes in their portfolio for the years 26 and 20 and on, and 28 and 30, and a product like ours would fit in very nicely with their other GI products.
Well, listeners, once again, we are speaking with James Sapirstein, President and CEO of AzurRx BioPharma Inc., traded on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol AZRX. James, obviously, as I pointed out, I'm a former accountant, so everything comes down to the bottom line, but you are a company that is providing relief to people. So I would assume that one of the missions for the company is not just to bring value to its shareholders, but to bring relief to a massive market in 2 different areas, cystic fibrosis and chronic pancreatitis. Is that a driving force for the company?
Absolutely, and it's another reason why I joined. I've been in the healthcare business for a very long time and worked in HIV and very early on in the disease. And my mission, I'm a pharmacist first, and I took the oath to help people, and as has Jim Pennington and everyone else in this company. I've got friends of mine 2 friends who have cystic fibrosis kids and who have grown up now. And I'm a diabetic myself, so I've suffered from acute pancreatitis, and I absolutely know how painful it is. So I have a lot of empathy for our patients, and it's important that we put something out there that's going to make their life easier and improve their quality of life. The one aspect to our product is that I didn't mention before is a big differentiator for us. Is not only are we humanized, but the pill burden is far less. So where some of these kids are taking 25 to 40 capsules of PERT per day, we think about that. That's a meal in itself. They take it with meals and with snacks. We can cut that down to anywhere from 8 to 16. Now, that still sounds like a lot, and that is a lot, but it's far less than 25 to 40 that they have to take per day. So from a quality of life perspective, it's a lot less pill burden for some of these folks, and as a pharmacist, I can tell you that is huge. And not only that, there aren't any kind of animal allergies that come up with some of these folks. So it's a very safe product for people to take, and it's going to improve their quality of life. And that's really what we're all about, and we'd like to partner with all the different foundations and patient care groups who are behind us and really want to see this product come to the market. And we believe it'll do really well once it's out there.
Well, very good. Listeners, I want you to visit InvestorBrandNetwork.com. They are the sponsor for the Stock2Me podcast that you're listening to. Go ahead and click on the Clients tab. Right there, you will find a link to AzurRx BioPharma. I want you to learn about this management team and their history. I want you to learn about what they are doing currently, as well as their financial highlights. Everything is available for you at InvestorBrandNetwork.com. James, thank you so much for your time, your insight, and your candor into your exciting company. We look forward to great things from you and your company here in 2020 and well beyond. Thanks for your time today, James.
Thank you, and thanks for listening, everyone. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. For James Sapirstein, this is Stuart Smith saying thanks so much for listening.
The following Stock2Me podcast was an Investor Brand Network audio production. IBN is a financial news and publishing company delivering a new generation of corporate communication solutions, including news aggregation and syndication, social communication, and enhanced news release services. Investor Brand Network may receive payments for corporate communications relations, as well as various press releases and social media solutions provided to its clients. IBN holds no shares of any company named on the IBN sites, brands, and/or podcasts. To be clear, all officers, directors, and independent contractors of Investor Brand Network hold zero positions in and do not trade or intend to trade the securities for their own accounts. This interview is not an offer or recommendation to buy or sell securities. Information in this broadcast is presented solely for informative purposes and is not intended to be or should it be construed as investment advice. As in all investments, investment in the featured company carries an investment risk. Listeners should review the company thoroughly with the registered investment advisor or registered stockbroker. This podcast audio interview by Investor Brand Network is not intended to be a complete study of the featured company or other companies mentioned. Information used and statements of fact have been obtained from featured company and other sources, but not verified nor guaranteed by Investor Brand Network as to completeness and accuracy. Such information is subject to change without notice. Please see our full disclaimers and disclosures at investorbrandnetwork.com.